Hi, I'm Ed Parcaut, your host of Inner Edison and also the Real Estate Jerky. Live today, we're here with Laura Jennings. Laura, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on. A lot of people don't realize why we're doing this. We do a radio show over the weekend, and it's on 1360 KFIV, and we've been doing that for about almost 3 years now. But the problem we run into is we can't really go in depth because when we have somebody on our radio show, they can only talk about for about 18 minutes. You can't really go in depth in 18 minutes. So we decided to come up with this idea, having Real Estate Jerky live and go in more depth with agents and other people around to see what's really going on. So one of the reasons we're having you today was the pros and cons of selling in the seller's market. But before we get into that, let's get a little bit about your background. I mean, I read your bio and it was on there, but I did not know that you were doing stuff in your family business. So, as a kid or a younger person. So you want just a quick little synopsis who you are?
Yeah. I grew up in a real estate family. My stepmother was a real estate broker, managed a real estate office for many, many years. My father actually was an attorney, and they started teaming up together and started buying, selling, and managing a lot of commercial properties, office buildings, self-storage facilities, multifamily residential. And I did this with my family business for about 26 years before coming up to Tuolumne County and working and doing real estate here.
I mean, for most people, for me, first thing I would look at my kids and say, why would you want to go in the mortgage industry? Right. Because a lot of kids say, I'm not going to go in the family business, or I'm going to go in the family business. What did you really like about the real estate stuff that really wanted you to be in that field?
I just had a really good education early on, all along the way with my folks. And I just found that it's something I excelled at. I love working with people. This is one of the biggest things that most people will do in their lifetime is a transaction of selling or buying a home. And I like being part of that and being their problem solver and being the calm in the storm when crisis hits, walking them through every step of the way. It's something I've really enjoyed.
And I think a lot of people don't realize how important it is to have the right agent help you. Right. And I think there's questions out there. If just reel off the thing real quick, basically, what's the difference between somebody who's called a realtor and somebody who's called just a real estate agent?
Well, a realtor is somebody who belongs to the National Association of Realtors. It's a designation. Most real estate agents are realtors, but it's a designation through the National Association. We have to abide by our ethics and have guidelines that we have to follow.
So it's good to be part of that. Right.
Absolutely.
That means everybody's following the same code of ethics. Everybody says, this is what I'm going to do. The reason I bring that up, people ask me all the time, what is the difference? What is it? And I'm a lone person, so it's not my job to explain to them what is a realtor, first of all. And half the time you got to tell them how to say it, right? Because they always say it wrong. They add that extra I in there. Anyway. All right. So let's get into the topic today. Pros and cons of selling your home in a seller's market. First question would be, what is a seller's market?
Well, a seller's market is when the demand of housing for housing exceeds the supply. So that means we have a lot more buyers out there looking for homes than we have homes available. And that creates a unique market for buyers and sellers. But the markets change. They fluctuate. Right now, we're in a really strong seller's market. And a seller's market is typically when the supply of housing is less than 6 months supply of that we could sell. So if we had no more homes coming on the market in 6 months, those homes would be sold out. That's an even market. So less than that would be a seller's market. Right now in Sonora, I think we have about a 2-month supply of homes on the market. So if no more homes came on the market right now, everything would be sold out in 2 months. That's a strong seller's market.
And that also means that if you put your house on the market in today's market and it doesn't sell within a week, right, or multiple offers, what is the problem?
Homes are typically selling right now the first week or two. They're getting a contract. And so it might mean that it's overpriced. It might mean that there's a problem with the house. Yeah, most homes are selling very quickly.
Right. So, and that's what's so important, to be with the right agent and have them look at what it should be priced at and price it right, even in a seller's market. Because a lot of people, I think, are under the impression that, all right, in this market, I'm the seller, I can put it here and then I'll let people write offers, right? But then I think people get not offended, but they're afraid to write an offer because they're afraid to, offend the seller, or they're not even, that's so high, they're not going to come down. Is that what the experience is that you see?
Yeah, what we're finding is when the seller decides what they think, they're seeing this crazy market, and they decide what ridiculous number they want to put their house for sale on, is they're really not going to get showings, or they might get a few showings, but they're not going to get any offers. If that's the case, I mean, they should really listen to the realtor and price the house appropriately, and then you might get, then you get to see all the aspects of what happens when you do price your house on the market, and we can go into those pros.
You can go anytime you want. This is your
Okay.
show. I'm just trying to help get the word out. So you have total control. If you want to jump into pros and cons, and if the other thing people don't know about Laura, because not in her bio, we didn't put out there, but she rescues dogs like nobody business. She loves horses. She loves everything. So we're going to hear dogs in the background. We're going to hear things, and that's great. So just don't worry about it. Move on. And but you next time, every time I come there's like, oh, that's another dog we just got, and we're here to help. You love animals, and that's great.
Yeah. We do. We seem to accumulate a lot of them. Old clients, chickens and pigs and whatnot.
Well, when they're moving, they don't know what to do with them, right?
Right. They tend to end up at Jennings Ranch.
All right.
So the pros. So pricing your house is super key. Pricing it appropriately is really important. But in a seller's market, some of the key factors that you're going to find are, the seller is going to get the maximum price possible that they're going to get in a seller's market. They're often going to get more than the house is really worth, because we have so many buyers looking and competing, that they get, they're in a feeding frenzy. They want to get that house. I apologize about my dogs barking.
No, don't even worry about it. No,
they're in the bedroom.
We do this virtual everywhere. It's the radio shows the same way. I mean, you hear animals, you hear everything. That's how we live now. So don't worry about it.
And so a seller's market is an excellent time for a seller to put their house on the market. They are going to get the highest price possible for their home. Another aspect of a seller's market is they're going to get multiple offers often. There's so many buyers out there competing for that house that they're writing offers. They're writing excellent offers. They're competing against each other. They're knowing that there's other offers out there that they want to try to get this house. And there's such limited inventory that, buyers are struggling to find the house that they like, that they can get into. So we're getting really good, clean offers. Another aspect of it is the seller's going to get the best terms possible. A lot of times buyers are writing offers that are, they're including some of the typical seller expenses that the buyer's going to pay now, because they want to make their offer look that much better to the seller. And so things like a natural hazard disclosure report, which is typically a seller expense, they're about $100, but a buyer might pay that. The buyer might be paying maybe some of the inspections that you might expect a seller to pay. Up here in Tuolumne County, we have a lot of septic systems and wells, and the buyer sometimes is going to offer to take care of those expenses and those reports, and not rely on the seller, just so their offer will look a little bit better than that next offer. They might agree to waive or pay for their own home warranty, which is a lot of times a seller expense that a buyer might do. And then the other thing is a lot of times what we're seeing now is that the buyer's either waiving their contingencies period, or shortening them dramatically. So instead of the typical 17 dadays.
Okay. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
I wanted you to explain the contingencies. All right.
Yeah, so a buyer typically has 17 days to do their inspections, all their inspections, their home inspection, their pest inspection, or roof inspection. If we have well and septic, the seller sometimes will do those. But we have 17 days for them to kind of evaluate the house and look at those reports and see if this is really, the house is what they want to purchase, to make sure there's no really crazy kind of problems that they might find. And a lot of times we're getting them to shorten their inspection period. We don't have to wait 17 days. They might do it in 7 if they can get their inspections lined up really quickly. That way the seller doesn't have to wait that long to find out if this buyer is really in or not. During that 17 days, typically a buyer could walk away, or their inspection contingency period, they could walk away. So the shortening that period means the seller is not in limbo too much longer.
And they don't have to wait for Now, are you seeing that possibly waiving the appraisal contingency too up in your area? Because I know that's happening a lot in the Bay Area. Even if it doesn't come in, they're still taking the house for what it's,
Yeah, there's a couple ways to do that. If it's a cash buyer, they're not doing an appraisal,
right.
So we don't have to worry about what the appraisal comes in at, or we don't need one. They're not going to spend the money to do it. They want the house, and they're willing to pay what they're willing to offer. But on anybody with a loan, or most people with a loan, there are some exceptions to that, but most people with a loan are going to have a required appraisal by their lender, and appraisals are often kind of behind our market. And so even though we have 14 people applying for the same house and they're all going over asking, and the prices get quite high, the house still technically has to meet the appraised value. Otherwise, 2 things have to happen. One is the seller has to lower that price to that appraised value, or 2, the buyer has to come in with the additional cash to cover the difference.
Or so I've been seeing a lot of videos out there regarding this, saying, I got the idea to fix this problem, right? If you're putting 20% down and the appraised value doesn't come in as high, then you need to put down 18% and use the rest of the other 2% of that cash to make the difference. It's not a major, surprise how to make this work. It's just, you still come in the transaction with the same amount of money. You're just going to put a little bit less down, and the other part's going to go for the difference. So, I mean, so a lot of people get freaked out if they remove the appraisal contingency, because they're like, but I got to pay more for the house. But once it closes, right, the moment that it records at that price point, your house is now worth that price. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I think, and I don't mean to cut in here. I just want to add a little things occasionally. So, but I'm starting to see a lot of the appraisal waivers where, I mean, not what the waivers are when we're doing the loans, but where they're just saying, I'm no contingency at all. Where there is no inspection period. There's none at all. So we don't care when you order your appraisal. If you're doing a loan, we don't care, because you don't have to waive it. So
great. Another thing that's great for a seller in a seller's market, one of the pros, is that you often get a backup offer, and you can take your second best offer as a backup offer. And there's which is exceptional for a seller, because a couple of things. One is that it keeps that first buyer on track to meet all their deadlines. They can't exceed their deadlines on the contract. They have to remove their contingencies on time, because they know there's somebody in their wings waiting to swoop in if they don't keep up with that contract, meet the terms of their contract. And then the other thing is in the event that the first buyer does walk away during the inspection period, that you have somebody ready to go right into escrow. So it's a good thing for a seller to have a backup offer in place. And you get to pick the best offer possible out there when you have these multiple offers. You get to review all the terms. It's not always about price. Sometimes it's about terms. Sometimes, the seller needs maybe a little bit of extra time at the back end of the sale to rent back. Recently, I had a deal where buyers are asking for or allowing a seller to live there for 2 weeks for free. No charge to stay that extra 2 weeks that they need to move out. And that's a savvy agent who can come up with these key items that might make the difference in that buyer getting that getting that offer accepted.
Have you seen anybody? So we're talking about what the buyers are doing, right? We haven't got, these are all the pros right now in the seller market. Have you seen buyers paying the escrow and title fees of the seller yet?
I have not.
Okay.
I have not. They've been paying, I've seen quite a bit of other fees being paid for, but I haven't, not up here. I haven't seen that yet.
Okay. Because I've seen that where if you look at the numbers of what the seller really pays in the escrow side of it, it's really not that much. I mean, most of the title fees are the buyer side anyway. They are the owner title policy that sometimes, is that split up in your area 50-50 or is that
We
paid?
split, yeah, we split it 50-50 up here.
So you're talking about that and the other. So, I mean, we're talking maybe, I don't know, let's just say it's $2,000, but that's cheaper than, you know, some of these other things they're getting rid of to get them in the house. But the whole thing about them being able to rent the place back for nothing so they get their offer accepted was a really smart idea. So,
it is. Yeah. It is. It's creative. And agents are having to get more and more creative with this tight market. You know, they're writing multiple offers on houses and trying to get their buyers accepted. And when you're competing against multiple other buyers, it's a tough market right now for a buyer. And yeah, so they have to be creative. It's important.
All right. So I know we're going through all the pros and cons, but we do have a question and maybe you can help them. I'm gonna put it on the screen. It says, my husband and I are trying to buy our first home with a VA loan, but our offers keep getting rejected. What are we doing wrong?
Well, this has come up recently, and this just came up just today, actually. When you have multiple offers coming in, from the seller's perspective, a clean, easy offer, such as a cash offer or a conventional loan, is quite a bit cleaner and easier for a seller than risking having to clear that Section 1 pest, that they might find some additional stuff, and it's an expense the seller's typically having to pay. Now that could be negotiable, but you know, when you're looking at 3 or 5 or 10 offers, they're going with the cleanest one. And so unfortunately, VA loans can be a little bit more challenging for a seller when you're competing against cash offers or a conventional offer.
Yeah. And you're right. I mean, a lot of people don't realize that. I mean, cash offers are, you know, going to go first unless they're so ridiculously low, then they're not even going to look at them. Then you go 20% down, 10% down, or 15% down, 10% down, 5% down, 3% down. Then you go FHA, VA, and USDA. Right. And then the sad part is the VA is pretty much guaranteed to close. The only issue you run into, especially in your area, would be any pests that come up. Now, a lot of people don't realize this, but VA allows for a short form pest report, which just says there's no active pests. It doesn't look at dry rot, doesn't look at anything else. It just says that. The problem is in some states, in some counties, the pest people will say, we don't do that form. We do the California form, or we do the state form. We have to do. But I know, and please, I'm not, but in your area, we've had the short form done. So it can be done, but from a seller perspective, they're going to want to take the cleanest offer to get the most for their money and get out of here, because that's they have to go now find another house too. And we'll get into that on the cons. But you know, I totally get it. Right now, unfortunately, all these vets we want to help, and I have a lot of them. It's very difficult for them to get into contract because of the fact of, one, a lot of sellers and listing agents still think that they have to pay something of the vet's fees, and they don't. And the other thing is the pest issue, which is really not an issue as long as we can get the pest company to do a short form. However, saying that would mean, well, that means I have to have the seller agree that we're going to do this, and that's not going to come up and bite us. So it's just one of those times where there is more people. I saw 1 in 4 offers are cash right now still. So that means you only have 75% of the other offers are going to be conventional, you know, all those other things. So you have a lot of offers. So what's your average offers? And we'll get back to the pros and cons in a second. But what do you think your average number of offers on a property are right now?
5 probably.
All right. And are you seeing cash still on some of your?
Yeah, we're seeing cash offers coming in. And what I'm hearing is that what some people are doing, because in this competing market, is that some buyers are pulling money out of their 401ks or their retirement accounts to get that house in contract. And then after it closes, they can refinance it and put that money back in. which again is just a creative way of getting it done. But it's tough when you're competing against quite a few other offers.
And what they can do is they can talk to their tax person and their financial, the people who control that, because you can take money out of those, from what I understand, and you have up to 90 days to put it back in. So what you could do is take the money out at close, pay it off, and then start a delayed financing, refinance is what we call it, to where they can refinance and then pay themselves back. So it can be done. And that's just, again, another way of having cash. Or, the other way you could do it is get a family member to pay cash for the place and do the same refinance afterwards. Right.
Right.
So it's trying to be a smart, trying to figure ways to get you in front so you can get that house. Right.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Where were we at? By the way, she gave me a huge list of pros and cons. So, and I'm a slow typer, so I apologize if I'm looking away from the screen while I'm putting it in.
Do you want to hear some cons? Should we talk about?
Sure. Let's go down there. Sure. I mean, what else are we going to do? All right. Where are we at? Let's see here. So, all right. So you going to start with the first one?
Yeah. So
that's huge. I think a lot of people don't know that one. So.
On the difficult side, a seller has to be really ready to move out quickly, because in this market, most homes, unless we negotiate something, which we could, certainly, I have a seller that needs 60 days, and so they said they'd like a 45-day escrow, which is a little on the longer side right now, actually, a 45-day escrow and 2 weeks rent back. So they wanted 60 days, which is a little long, but typically in this market, you're going to get your offer very quickly, your offers in very quickly. You'll get your house in contract within 1 to 2 weeks of having it on the market. And so they need to kind of be prepared for finding or having another place to live very quickly.
Yeah, I think that's, a lot of people don't realize how fast their house will go. And then now, are you still seeing people put contingencies on the house with them finding another house?
Occasionally.
Okay.
Occasionally, that's a challenge in this market, for somebody who has to sell in order to purchase. Again, that's not ideal for the seller to accept an offer that's contingent, because you might be holding up that
I'm
house.
sorry, I meant the other way. The seller who is accepted an offer and they said it's contingent on them finding a
replacement. Yeah, we do see that on occasion.
Okay. I just want to make sure, because I know that, if it's easy to sell your house, but then you can't go find another house, then that's, it could take a while. Right.
Yeah. And that's something the buyer needs to be a little bit concerned about, if that seller can't get into the next house. Another con of selling in a seller's market is the seller is going to have constant showings that first 2 weeks. They will probably have, we're seeing, the first 3 or 4 days, we're seeing 30 people running through the house. They have to have their house ready to go, beds made, dishes done, and be out of the house, just have the house available to show. So that first week or two, you're gonna have a lot of people touring through your house while you get into contract.
Would you recommend that they go on vacation for a week or something?
No, they can't go far.
No, I mean, but you can do electronically. They can always sign the offers.
Right, they can't go far. They have to have their computer available.
Because
stay out of the house during the day. Typically, you're not usually going to have showings after 6:30.
All right. Okay. So just normal, and you guys set up appointments. You set up appointments now, like that you could, because of COVID and everything else, you have appointments set up, right? That they can come in.
We do. Everything is by appointment now.
Yeah. What a change. I should be that way forever. The other thing is everybody needs to be pre-qualified or pre-approved before they can go in the house, which is a thing that should be that way forever. Right.
It's a benefit to get rid of those looky-loos. People who aren't serious buyers, that aren't really ready to buy. We're avoiding all that with COVID. We want to see qualified buyers getting into the home that are well qualified, that are ready to buy, and it's good. It's good for the agents. It's good for the sellers. We're not wasting our time with people who are just kind of thinking about it, kicking the tires.
Yeah, in this market, you don't have time for those people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So another probably one of the biggest cons in this market, and we talked briefly about this before, but is making sure that the house is going to meet the appraised value. So I have an example of a house that we had 14 offers on, and they went in Tuolumne County, which our average sales price is around 350. They went $40,000 over asking, and that's worrisome. And they have a loan, and so the challenge is are we going to meet that appraised value? Is this deal going to fall apart if that buyer doesn't have enough cash to make that difference or adjust their loan, like you mentioned, to make that work? So meeting the appraised value is one of our biggest concerns in this type of a market with somebody with a loan.
All right. So what do you do to make sure, like because some people, right, I want to just win, right? And I think that's one of the, I'm going to jump to that one if you don't mind. The next one, overzealous, right? They have to compete, they have to win, right? And then sometimes they have buyer's remorse, they want to cancel the inspection period, leaving the seller to go back on with a backup offer. But one of the things also is this overzealous buyers want to win so badly that they do what you just said. They do 40,000 over asking. So how as a seller, how do you protect your seller with a offer like that?
Well, you want to make sure, one, that you have either a proof of funds, if they're a cash buyer, or a pre-approval letter from their lender, and the lender has verified their funds. That's important. So we know we have a good qualified buyer, that we're not taking a risk on somebody who really can't buy that house, or they've just gone in with telling the lender what they've what they have in the bank that has been verified. So that's important. But sometimes we do run into they're so overzealous about winning that offer, that they when they really come down to think about it during that inspection period, they might kind of have that buyer's remorse and go, do I really want to spend this much? So ideally, if you have a shorter inspection period, you don't have to wait too long for them to decide if they're really in. Once they remove those inspection contingencies where they're evaluating the house and doing their inspections and looking at those reports and evaluating the fire insurance costs up here, the insurance costs, and making sure they're comfortable with those numbers, that once they remove that inspection contingency, they're in a sense locked in, other than the appraisal and the loan. So that's our unknown period. That's our period that we just don't know if they're 100% in yet or they're locked in yet.
So, all right. So my other question would be, all right, so say it's 40,000 over asking. Do you go to them and say you're going to guarantee you're going to come in with at least this amount? Do you guys say that on the purchase price? On the when they're countering, if you're going to offer 40,000 over asking, then you're going to take it for at least this amount over.
You can write an addendum or a counter that specifies how much over appraised value they're willing to do and how much cash they have available to make that happen.
Well, I'm just thinking, because to protect you and the seller, if I could write an offer 50,000 over asking, and I know the appraised value is going to come in maybe 25,000 over appraised value, so that means I don't really pay the 50, but I beat everybody else out because I said I possibly would pay that amount. So I think so the question would be, I've heard in the past where they say, okay, I'm going to do at least 5,000 or 10,000 guaranteed over asking, right?
Over the appraised value.
Yeah, whatever the appraised value comes in case it came in low, they would still have to pay the difference.
And we have to be careful with the wording on those kind of that kind of language, because we don't want to lock the seller in. If you have a really terrible appraisal, we don't want to lock the seller in to having to sell. You always want to protect that seller and make sure that they have an out if appraised value comes in too low. So you don't want to lock them into just guaranteeing to take $5,000 or $10,000 over that appraised value, because that's a little unknown. It's a little subjective.
Right. I'm just wondering, because if you're going to get somebody who doesn't have that funds, right? Because you talked about how they just told them. Typically, when you're dealing with clients and they tell you what they make and they tell you how much money they have in, and you run the credit, and that's a pre-qual. A pre-approval means that we've seen their bank statements, we've seen their stock accounts, we've seen their income, we've seen all those numbers, and we run DU, we run all that kind of stuff to verify what they can do. So what you're saying is you want to make sure those people have been pre-approved so that you know for a fact that they have that money, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And staying in contact with their lender before we, accept an offer. I'll always feel it's important to have a conversation with their lender, make sure they're well qualified, make sure they've done that verification so that we know we won't run into a problem later.
Right. And one of the other issues is if they're out of the area lender or online lender, they might not know that the average, fire insurance in your area could be starting at $200 a month, right? And they write it for 75 or 65. They find out that the insurance is $300 a month, and then the buyer goes like, "I don't want to buy that now," right?
Right. Yeah, having all those conversations prior to accepting that offer is important.
All right, I'm off my soapbox now. Now back to you.
Good.
All right, so we were at overzealous. Sorry, I jumped ahead.
I'm going to go back to some pros.
Let's see. Well, can I do the last two cons? Because I think we talked about it originally about the seller buying another house and proving challenging and to have a contingent on the sell of their home to move into another one, right? So I think the last two are pretty much the same thing, basically saying the same thing, that they're going to be paying top dollar for their new home, right? In this market.
So yeah, on the downside, once you're in the seller's market, that seller if he's getting a replacement home, it could be challenging if he has to have it contingent on the sale of his home, right. And getting it in contract, because again, if they're competing against other buyers that are paying cash, that could be a challenge. So having their other home already either locked in, already in escrow, or having some interim housing available is key. Knowing that they have a place to go is going to be important in this market. So those are all conversations that the agent needs to have with their seller. What's your plan? Do you have a place to go? Are you planning on buying something else? Are you planning on buying something in this market? The other thing is they're going to be paying, if they're in the same market, obviously they're going to be paying top dollar for their next house as well. So you have to have all these conversations with the sellers.
Yeah. So I think it's more involved than just listing your house. And it sounds, you need an agent like yourself who's knowledgeable of the area, know everything. Of your sellers, right, that you had, say 10 of them, how many of them are moving out of state?
More than half.
Oh, really?
More than half. We're seeing a lot of people fleeing to Idaho and Wyoming and Montana and Oregon, Washington.
Sonora's close to that anyway. So
yeah,
I'm more County in certain places. They're used to certain mountains anyway. So
yeah, I have one client one seller that's going to be traveling for a year. They're taking advantage of this market and not wanting to jump right back into home ownership and not sure where they're gonna end up. So they're gonna travel for a year.
Wow, sounds like fun. I'm sure my wife would like that. I'm sure. Hope she's not listening today. Good. All right, back to your. Let's end on a positive. So some more pros, will you?
So yeah. So again, the pros exceed the cons certainly in this market, right. For a seller. A seller is going to. You typically have a very quick close. A cash offer. If you have a cash offer, might close anywhere from 14 to 21 days. So that's good. I mean, once they make the decision to go, it's good to get it done and close that escrow and let them move on to the next chapter. Also, a buyer is typically in this type of a seller's market, a buyer's not going to ask for a lot of extensive repairs. They're not going to, say I want that deck replaced or I want, a variety of things. They're typically not going to ask for a laundry list of items to be everything on that home inspection to be fixed, because the seller's going to say no. Either take it or leave it, and if you don't like it, then we'll go with that next that next buyer. So in a seller's market, the sellers definitely have the upper hand in negotiations. They get to really pick and choose what they want to do. They don't have to do a lot of negotiations on repairs. We're also not seeing seller credits that you often will see in a buyer's market. So when we have a lot of houses on the market and only a few buyers or less buyers, buyers are typically coming in with asking for, we'll give you your price, but we want $9,000 in concessions, seller concessions and credit to pay our closing costs. We don't see that in the seller's market. So the sellers are getting full value. Right now in Sonora, I think sellers are getting 99.5% of their listed value on average. So, and often we're seeing well over, but I mean, overall,
So you're saying they're getting 99%, 99.99.
99.5% of the listed price on average.
Wow.
So
it used to be, but that means some people are pricing it over, over their start point.
Yeah. And some people are, getting a house for less than it's listed because maybe they had a seller that overpriced their house and they might be getting it for a little less than that. But on average, we're getting basically the listing prices for sure. 2 years ago or last year, I think we were at 2.5%. So they were very close to the listed price last year at the same time. But right now we're getting, it's gone up to full listing price basically.
So I think you talked about your clients that are going to travel by selling their house, and you're saying some of the people will rent, right? During this period of time, they'll sell their house and rent.
Yeah, right? I do see that. People are seeing that the market's so great for selling their homes right now. They're getting top dollar, and some of them are just wanting to get out of the housing market for right now and just take their cash and maybe rent. Not put that money back into another house where they're having to compete against other buyers and pay sometimes over asking prices. So some people are just deciding to rent or do something like traveling in their RV for a year. And then they'll decide to buy later when this market evens out a little bit. And it's always cyclical. The market will come back down as more and more houses come on the market.
I disagree.
It'll even out a little bit.
Yeah.
Not that we're going to see necessarily lower prices, but I think we won't see this type of a market where there's so much competition. And as more and more sellers come on the market, with COVID, quite a bit of people decided not to sell or they wanted to wait it out and kind of see. And so our inventory was so low. But it seems like every week now we're having more and more houses coming on the market. It's starting to lighten up just a touch, and it'll even back out.
Right. Now, I want to go back to this just because of what you just said, right? We talked about this, about how their offer for the vet it's not getting accepted because of where the market is right now. I want to let them know, don't get discouraged because it won't stay like this forever, meaning that eventually more and more houses will come on the market that will allow you to get your offer accepted. The other thing is, because I'm seeing a lot of sellers, or I should say landlords are looking at selling their properties from being landlords anymore because of the rent situation here in California and how the things have changed so much, where it's more. We had a show on this last weekend on the radio, and we talked about that. We had gone evictions. They were talking about all the changes, and like, why would I want to be a landlord anymore? Right. So a lot of people who onesie twosies landlords, like, I'm done, and they're selling that. So I think we're going to start seeing some more of those properties come on the market to where more and more houses on the market, but not crazy on the market, just enough to help out. So it's not so crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you seeing anything like that?
In a normal market, we're happy. We're happy. The seller is happy. The agent is happy with just getting one really good, clean offer. So yeah, your VA buyers back there, it will turn around, and they should hang in there. I know it's frustrating, but it will get better. And just write the cleanest offer you can, make it the best presentable offer you can do, and hopefully you'll get in.
Don't worry, they will eventually. And then, all right, so there's one more comment from me. Sorry. It says, is it a good time to refinance a mortgage? Well, it's a good time to refinance and it's a good time to purchase, right? I mean, rates are still historically low. I looked, Fannie Mae said rates today are an eighth lower than we were last year at this time. So
Nice.
that's still, we at this time last year we were just getting into the what was that the wave. We all were locked down to flatten the curve, so we hadn't hit so bad. And it was just the beginning of April. I think it wasn't until June that it got so bad, and then June took off, and everybody So for us, good time to refinance. Yes, it's a great time to refinance. And even if you look at where rates are today, you need to look at, should you do a cash out refinance and pay off some of your debt? And the reason I'm saying this, and I'm sorry, this was all about you and your sellers, but
Yeah.
I'm just going to throw it in there basically, because what I've seen is if I pay off a bunch of your debt and you save $1,200 to $1,600 a month because we're paying off that debt, you can then turn around and take that same savings and reapply it towards that 30-year note and have that thing paid off in 13 years. Where if you don't do it and you just refinance your first to a lower rate and you still have all that debt, well, the average debt that people have is at 24%. So that means rule of 78, that will double every 3 years, right? So that means your debt's going to double, making that minimum payment. Well, now if we do it through a loan and do a cash out refinance, pay that all that off, you're going to be in a better situation going forward to be able more in control of what you want to do. And so I don't, a lot of people are like, don't do that. Don't do that. I believe that too, if you're going out to buy ATCs and boats and everything else just to go have fun. But if it's to restructure your debt so you're in a better situation, you should go talk to somebody, see if they can help you. And you can always direct message me. So anyway, I'm done. I'm off my little thing. All right. So we're back with Laura Jennings. Anything else you want to add today? Doesn't seem like 40 minutes, does it?
No, it's great. People should hang in there. It won't always be like this, but it is a good time to sell. We do need more inventory on the market. So if people are ready to make a change, it's an ideal time for them to sell their homes. Reach out to your local agent and
actually reach out to Laura Jennings. You can message her through Facebook. You can get her on, you can email her. What's your phone number so I can put it on the screen for somebody if they want to get a hold of you?
It is 209-591-3444.
That was 3444, right? Let's make sure I got this right. Is that correct?
Sure.
All right. So, because people are going to have questions. They're going to watch this. They're going to watch it again and again and again. They might not be able to click on your, direct message you or DM, whatever you want to call it. They can call you on that phone number and you can answer their questions. And if they need an agent somewhere else, I'm sure you would help them get the right agent to take care of them instead of doing a shot in the dark, correct?
Absolutely. It's important to have somebody who knows what they're doing, who is experienced and who can walk you through every step of the way. It is one of the biggest transactions probably most people make in their lifetime. So it's important to have somebody on your side who's going to back you, be there to walk you through and help you through it. And it doesn't have to be painful.
No, it should be one of the easiest processes. We all know what we're doing these days. We know how to do it. It's if you're with the right people, the professionals on the beginning, on the real estate side, the lender side, it's going to be an easy transaction. It's only a nightmare as if you're somebody in that party is not very good. And so please, you need to pick the right professionals. So if you guys have any questions at all, please reach out to Laura. Like I said, direct message her, call her on the phone. Here's her phone number again. If you guys need to get in touch with me, you can reach me through here on my same thing, Facebook, YouTube, you name it, you can get a hold of me. So please reach out if you have any questions. Laura, I want to thank you so much for being on today.
You are very welcome. It was an honor.
All right. Stay right there. And by the way, if you guys remember, we're here every Tuesdays and Thursdays at 11 a.m. and we'll talk to you next week.